Hey guys, hope you're doing well, staying healthy. In the previous lesson, chapter 15, we talked about local laws and how they are made. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the local court system and what happens when you get accused of breaking a local law. Okay, we're going to be starting chapter 16, which is talking about local courts. So let's take a look at the vocabulary words. There's a couple of words here I want you to take a close look at. Misdemeanor is the first one, and a misdemeanor is a small crime with a minor punishment, usually less than 1 year in jail, but depending on the state that can vary. The next one is a fine, and a fine is money you pay after being convicted of breaking a law. Let's take a look at arraignment. An arraignment is a hearing before a judge, and usually before your trial, where they tell you your charges and you enter a plea, whether you're going to say guilty or innocent. They also usually set bail. And a lot of people don't understand bail correctly. It's money you pay to get out of jail while awaiting your trial. And we'll go into more detail on that in a little bit. So, local courts in their cases. Every city and county has local courts. In a city, the main local courts are called municipal courts. Outside of the city, they can be called justice courts. Those are the lowest courts in the state court system. They are called local courts because they take cases that are handling local laws. They usually handle civil and criminal cases. So we've talked about these before, but a civil case is a disagreement or a broken contract. An example of a civil case can be a divorce. Family law courts are usually going to be civil cases. And for civil cases, people don't go to jail. They usually just have to pay a fine or pay something that makes a situation right. So another example of a civil case would be an adoption. So civil cases are any time there is some kind of disagreement or a legal process that needs to be validated by a judge. Another example of a civil case is going to be something that happens at probate court, where they decide what happens to the property of someone who has died. Usually you have a will, but if you do not have a will, there can be court cases that happen to figure out who gets what, figure out which of your children get the house, who gets the car, how the money gets split. There's also small claims court, but we'll go into more detail on that in a minute. Local courts handle criminal cases, but they usually only handle misdemeanors. They're not going to handle serious crimes like felonies. Misdemeanors are small crimes, and usually it's things like shoplifting or disturbing the peace, and the punishment is typically less than 1 year in jail. Now, there's a difference between shoplifting and grand larceny. If you steal a pack of gum and a bag of Doritos, that's shoplifting. But if you're trying to steal thousands of dollars worth of merchandise, that's a much more serious crime. If a young person is the one facing the charges, usually their trial is handled by a juvenile court. Juvenile court is different than a regular court. They have some different rules they have to follow. Usually cameras are not allowed in juvenile court, and there's different punishments that juveniles are not allowed to get. Like it is illegal now to give a juvenile the death penalty. It's also illegal to give a juvenile life in prison without a possibility of parole. Okay, so the next court is going to be small claims court. Small claims court is going to be what you typically see if you watch like Judge Judy or Judge Joe Brown. And it's usually about disagreements or damage to property that's small in value. So it gives an example. Suppose you bought a new video game from your friend. When you get back home to play it, it doesn't work. So you go to your friend, you want your money back, but he refuses. So you can solve it a couple ways. The legal way would be to take them to court and get them to pay for the damages. Small claims cases can be handled very, very quickly. Some of them are only a few minutes. You might have to wait weeks for your case to be heard, but once you get there, the cases usually go pretty quick. There's no jury going to be involved in small claims cases because the cases aren't that serious to involve 12 different people calling them in, listening to it. So since there's no jury, it's going to be a judge that decides if you're guilty or innocent. And it's also using lawyers is discouraged. So if you are taking your friend to court because you broke your iPhone and your iPhone's worth $500, paying a lawyer $400 an hour doesn't make sense. So they do not recommend you use lawyers for small claims court. The judge listens to both sides of the story, and the judge is going to decide who is right or wrong, and the judge asks questions. At the end, he's going to decide how much that person must pay. In most cases, and in most states, small claims cases are up to $5,000. Some states it's less, some states it's more. The next local court we're going to talk about is traffic court, and they handle cases involving traffic violations. So they handle things like speeding tickets, parking tickets, driving recklessly. If your car runs out of gas and you have to leave it in the middle of the intersection, you can get your car ticketed, you can get towed for that. All of those things, they're not going to get you arrested unless you're a repeat offender. Most of the time, you just get a fine. And the cost of that fine can vary. Your parking ticket could be $50, could be $100. Your speeding tickets are going to depend where you're speeding and how much you're going over the speed limit. Most traffic cases have no lawyers and no jury too. Similar to small claims court, it doesn't make sense to have a jury and a lawyer because the cases are going to be solved quickly, and usually you're only talking about a couple $100. It doesn't make sense to bring in a lawyer that's going to cost you $300, $400 an hour for a $50 parking ticket. Usually in traffic court, you just pay your fine and then it's over. Okay, so let's talk about your rights once you are arrested. Most people who break local laws don't get arrested because those are going to be misdemeanors. Now, you can get charges, but usually you're not going to jail for those kind of things. Police officers can write you tickets for disturbing the peace. They can write you a ticket for speeding, and you have to pay a fine. If you want to argue and say you didn't do it, you can go to court. But there are some local crimes, some misdemeanors, where you can get arrested. If you get accused of vandalism or shoplifting or being on somebody's property without their permission, all of those kind of things are most likely going to get you taken into custody. When you are arrested, you lose your right to freedom, but you still do have many rights. Those rights are called your Miranda rights. So if you think about episodes of Law and Order you watch, those are the rights that the police read the person as they're being arrested. So once you are arrested, you have the right to remain silent. And that right is especially important for people because if you remain silent, you can't be forced to talk and say things that are going to make you look guilty. A lot of you guys have talked about a movie or a series on Netflix called When They See Us, and those kids in that series talked when they probably should have stayed quiet because they didn't know their rights. And the more they talked, the more trouble they got in. Now, they were not treated fairly at all, and I wish they had known these rights. You also have the right to a lawyer. Anyone accused of a crime has the right to a lawyer. If you cannot afford a lawyer or you don't have one, the state has to provide you one for free or for little cost. you have the right to appear quickly before a judge. So if you think about the amendments, that's going to be the Sixth Amendment, the right to a speedy trial. And the reason why that right is important is so you don't sit in jail for a long time waiting for your trial. And then once you finally get there, if they decide you're innocent, you wasted all that time in jail. So what happens? You appear before a judge and they're going to have an arraignment. At your arraignment, they tell you what you're being charged with, and you get to say whether you are guilty or innocent. That's called your plea. At the arraignment, after your plea, the judge is going to set bail. And a lot of people misunderstand bail. Bail is an amount of money you can pay to get out of jail while waiting for your trial. So let's say that you steal someone's car and you get caught. So when you go to court, you say not guilty, the judge can set your bail. And if your bail is $10,000, let's say you pay the bail, you get to get out of jail while you're waiting for your trial to happen. Now, once your trial happens, you have to show up, and if they decide you are guilty, you go to jail. Bail is basically a promise that you're going to show back up to court. So you think about it, you're letting somebody out of jail, taking a large sum of money, or it could be their house, and they get that money back once they show up for their trial. If they don't show up for their trial, they lose the bail. So imagine someone gets accused of a crime and their parents put up their bail. They put their house up for bail. If that person doesn't show up for trial, then their parents lose the house. They lose the property. Okay, guys. So now you're going to go into your Google Classroom and you are going to work on the worksheet for Chapter 16. Do the best you can, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'll do everything I can to help you. Stay healthy.